solve our problems, how much thanks do we give God for the benefits and the blessings?
Amen.
Some of that was mentioned. But we do it over and over and over. And listen, we need to really think about these things. Listen, when somebody comes up and asks you how you're doing, you know what most people's first response is? They want to tell you the things that are wrong, not the things that are right, because we're unthankful. Our focus is on the things that are wrong, not on the things that we should be thankful for. He goes on, unholy. Unholy. What is holiness? It's being separated and set apart. We have mixed so much with the world, you can't see the difference between the church and the world.
That's right.
You can't. And in a lot of churches you walk into, you don't see any difference. I mean, they look like the world, they talk like the world, they act like the world, they sing like the world. They're unholy. Without natural affection. Doesn't even nature itself teach you that it's unnatural for a man to be with a man and a woman to be with a woman? Without natural affection. We have even parents who don't love their children. Children who don't love their parents. It's not natural. We're not made that way. It's supposed to be a natural thing for us. But because of the influence of Satan, because of the evil that's in our world, because of all that, we don't even have that natural affection anymore. And you know why that is? Because we're in the last days. And I know I'm going to repeat myself a lot because I want it to sink in. We are like that because the church has gotten weak, and as the church goes down, Satan gets stronger and he can come in and do those kind of things. There was a time he couldn't do those kind of things because the church was a wall. The church was a wall that only let him go so far. But as the church gets weaker and as the church backs off, he can go further and further and further and further. Gary said something up there. Don't think that if you yield yourself to Satan, you can't be doing a lot of these things, and you won't be doing, because you will. Whoever you yield yourself to. I'm going to tell you something. The church needs to understand this and needs to understand it good. And I'm not saying this church, I'm saying the church. They need to understand this good. If you ain't sold out to God, you're in danger. That's right. If you ain't 100% totally sold out and committed to God, you're walking on dangerous ground. Because if you leave just a little space, Satan will get in there. And that's all he needs. He gets in a little space and he'll begin to widen it. And he'll begin to widen it. And he'll begin to widen it. And we end up like these kind of people. Without natural affection, truth breakers, false accusers, incontinent, which means unbendable and ungiving, fierce, despisers of those that are good. We are despised. You know that? Those who truly want to and strive to serve the Lord, who we would consider to be good, are despised. We are despised by them. When we try to live right and we try to do good and we try to be moral, we are despised. Despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. That one, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, has come right into the church in a big way. You know what a lot of the churches are all about? Doing things to keep people happy, doing things to give people pleasure, doing things to keep their focus and all that on these things. They're not teaching them to love God and to give themselves to God. They're teaching them about having fun and having a good time and doing things, pleasurable things, and enjoying this and enjoying that. And we become, even the church has become, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. And it's because, and I want you to get it, we're in the last days. We're very far into the last days. We are close, and we need to understand that we are close. He goes on and says, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. I don't even have to say anything about that. How many have a form but deny? How many have a form, but deny God, deny the power of God, deny all the things of God? Listen, I want us to understand. The reason I'm going over all these is because these are signs of the last times. And we're seeing them more and more and more and more. And it's getting chaotic. And it's going to increase. And it's going to continue to get chaotic. And this is just my thought. You can think what you want. I don't have Bible for it. But listen, it's going to get to a point where it's so chaotic nobody can take control. It's going to get to a point where it's so chaotic the world is just going nuts. And that would be the perfect opportunity for a man to stand up and say, I got the answer. And the Antichrist can step in. This is all connected. As the last days go further and further along, these things are going to get worse and worse. And it's just going to set everything up in order for the Antichrist to come in. And again, you've probably heard every preacher you've ever heard talk about the end times say this: I believe he's alive. I believe he's living on the earth today. And it's just a matter of time before he's in that position. I believe that. And everything that we see is setting up for him to come in. And I could go into a lot of things. I mean, there's just so much going on. Those of you that follow the news or look into things that aren't made well known or made public, there is a lot going on to set the stage for the Antichrist. It's there. All he's got to do is step out. That's it. It's ready. We're that close, people. And the church needs to understand that so that the church can be about the Father's business. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 3, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. We're there. We are there.
Amen.
I was told about a man who used to come to this church. And somebody from this church ran into that man and was talking about church and invited him to come back to this church. And he said he couldn't do that because his son was gay and this church wouldn't accept that. And then the man went on to say that God made him that way. This is somebody who used to be a member of this church, a part of this church. Listen, it's in the church. We are not, the church is not enduring sound doctrine. But what are they doing? Exactly what he says here. They shall turn away their ears from the truth and shall be turned unto fables. That's where the church is at. These are all signs of the last time. I'm going to tell you something. This country has more churches in it today than it ever has. It has more church members in it today than it ever has. We got mega churches. But I believe there are fewer true Christians in this country than there have ever been. And the number is dwindling. And it's getting smaller, and it's getting smaller, and it's getting smaller. Because we are in the last days. Jesus said in the last days, Paul wrote this, in the last days there will come a great falling away. Most of my life I believe that was people leaving the church. But I believe it's the church leaving God. I believe the church is falling away from God. I believe that's what he was talking about. Because we've got more churches than we ever had. We got more Christians than we've ever had. But how many of them are adhering to this word? How many of them are living this word? How many of them are following this word? Not many. Most of them are doing like this. They're not enduring sound doctrine. After their own lust, they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. They turn away their ears from the truth, and they shall be turned unto fables. All these things are signs of the last time, signs of the last day. And we see them, and we see them, and we see them, and we talk about them, and we talk about them, and we talk about them. And here's the question again. What is the church doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? What good is it doing the lost for me to come in here every Sunday? It's not doing them any good unless I take what I get in here and take it out there to them. Just coming to church isn't benefiting them. Just coming to church isn't fulfilling the Great Commission. Just coming to church isn't being the salt. Coming to church isn't being the light. Coming to church isn't winning the lost. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's what we're here for. That is our purpose. That's why, listen, if all God wanted to do was save you and you didn't have anything to do after that, why didn't He just take you home when He saved you? He left you here because you have a job to do. And He gave us things to look for, to know when His approach was near. We talked about the ones in Matthew 24. But look at these. These are more evident. Look at how people are becoming. Look what is becoming of people. And I want you to understand this. He said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the coming of the Son of Man. You know how it was in the days of Noah? They were a bunch of homosexuals. They were murdering each other. They were all about pleasure. They were all about everything like that, just like the world is today. And He said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the coming of the Son of Man. It had gotten so bad in the days of Noah. People were so evil and so wicked that He had to destroy them. We're that close to that happening again. How much more evil and wicked can this world get before God is going to say, enough's enough? We're close. And we need to understand we're close. And the reason we need to understand we're close is not just because we know we get to go to heaven then. That's great and that's good. And that's our hope. But we need to understand it's close so that we understand we don't have too much time to get the rest in. We need to begin to take it seriously, to understand that it is no time to be fooling around and playing around. Listen, He talks here, He says, the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth and shall be turned unto fables. And what happens when that happens? If you go back into Romans chapter 1 and 28, this is what happens to people who neglect and reject God. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers. All these things is what they become when they turn away from God. And this is what we're seeing. Backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful. That comes about by turning away from God. These people that Paul said in the last days would turn away from God became these things. Go home tonight, turn on the 11 o'clock news, and you're going to see this. You're going to see people fulfilling this scripture. They are all these things. Look at all the murder. Look at all the rape. Look at all the things that are going on. They're fulfilling this thing because this world, this country, the so-called church has turned itself away from God. Which just shows us we are in the last days. We are close, church. We are close. And again, I'm going to say, what is close? I can't tell you exactly what is close. I can't tell you it's tomorrow or it's next week. But I can tell you this. It's not very far away. And I can tell you this also. Even if it is a year, even if it is 2 years, even if it is 5 years, those people out there are not promised tomorrow. And we need to have an urgency about us. We need to be, all those people that went to that concert in Las Vegas probably thought they'd enjoy a good concert, go back to their hotel or home or wherever, go to bed, get up in the morning and have a nice breakfast. They either open their eyes in heaven or hell. They didn't have another chance. How many that you pass every day may not have another chance? How many that we pass every day might be their last day? We don't know. Whether God comes or not, whether the Lord steps out or not, which I believe he will very soon. But even if he doesn't, we need to understand there's an urgency. The church needs to get serious. And I know I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. We've got a small dedicated group here, and I'm so grateful for that. But honestly, let's be honest, even those of us who are here are not doing everything we could be doing. We're not doing everything we should be doing. We're not feeling the urgency like we should feel the urgency. And there are even those amongst us, and I'm not saying they're sitting here, but there are even those amongst us who don't take this thing seriously enough, that they put other things aside for God. We need to understand, and we need to get serious. God's not playing around. We can't play around. This is a serious thing. I don't know what happened. I don't know. Well, I do know. The church let down and Satan picked it up, and we've gotten to that point where people have been convinced that it's okay. It's just all right. God knows my heart. God understands. That's what we say for anything we want to do. The problem is, God does understand, and God does know your heart. The only person you're deceiving is yourself. We need to get serious. We need to get down to business. We need to understand that we are in a time crunch. We need to reach people for Christ. Lesson over in 2 Peter chapter 3. Verse 3. Knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. That's what I said earlier. And listen, I'm not saying that anybody's saying that here, or even thinking that here, but we're living that. We live like that. We live like it's just going to go on, and it's going to go on, and it's going to go on. We may not say the words, and we may not even form the thought, but listen, look at yourself, examine your own self. We live like we got all the time in the world. We live like it's just going to keep going. That's how we live. And by our actions, we're saying these very things. Where is it? I've heard it since I was a kid. He's coming, he's coming, he's coming. And he ain't here yet. And we just go on like he ain't going to be here. Jump over to verse 11 of that chapter. Peter says, well, before you get to that, after what I read, he talks about that there's going to come a day when all this is going to be dissolved, when all this is going to pass away. He is going to come. And this earth is going to be destroyed and everything in it, and the evil is going to be destroyed. And then in verse 11 he said, seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons art you to be? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. What manner of persons are we to be in all holy conversation and godliness? And that word conversation there means conduct. It don't mean just your speech. It's everything about you. What persons are we to be? How should we be, church? Knowing that this is coming. Knowing that this is what this world is going to face. Knowing that that's what the lost are going to face. Knowing that that's what our lost loved ones are going to face. Knowing that that's what people sitting in churches who have been deceived are going to face. What kind of people are we to be? You know what Jude said? On some have compassion, and some save with fear, and pulling them out of the fire. That's the kind of people we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be out there pulling them out of the fire. We need to have compassion on that. Gary said about, what he was talking about up here, got kind of on this a little bit. We need to have a little bit of compassion because there, but for the grace of God, go I. We need to understand that they're, like Gary said, they're doing what comes natural to them because naturally they are brute beasts. Because naturally they're going to follow the flesh. Because naturally they're going to give in to Satan. And we need to have a little bit of compassion on them. Why should we have compassion on them? Because Christ had compassion on us. That's why we are to have compassion on them. And Jude said to have compassion on some, and some say with fear, go out there and pull them out of the fire. That's the kind of people that we're supposed to be. Peter asked the question, knowing all this is going to happen, what manner of persons art you to be?